I have to be honest with you about something I got wrong. For years, early in my career, I told my patients the same thing every GP tells you. Eat your greens, more vegetables. The more colour on your plate, the better. I believed that completely. Then I started seeing the scans. Patients who did everything right. No smoking, healthy weight, blood pressure controlled, vegetables at every meal. And yet stroke, clot in the middle cerebral artery, speech gone, movement gone, family devastated. And when I looked at what they were eating, really looked, I saw a pattern I couldn't ignore. 7 vegetables, perfectly healthy vegetables. The kind you'd find in any Australian kitchen. The kind that appear on every government nutrition guide. They were quietly doing damage that no one warned them about. Because after 60, your body handles these foods in a way that is fundamentally different from how it handled them at 40. Not because the vegetables changed, because you did. Today, I'm going to tell you what I now tell every patient over 60 who sits across from me. Not the standard advice, the real conversation, the one we have after the risk shows up on the blood work. If you want that conversation, type the word doctor in the comments. Let me know you're here. Now, before we go through each one, I need you to understand something that changes how you see all of this. After 60, 3 things shift inside your body, quietly, without announcement. Your kidneys slow down. They no longer flush excess sodium and minerals as efficiently as they once did. So what used to pass through now lingers. Your arteries stiffen. The vessel walls lose flexibility. Pressure that your body once absorbed now pushes back. And your liver processes medication more slowly. So the food on your plate and the prescription in your cabinet are now having a conversation every single day that nobody told you about. When those 3 things combine with the wrong vegetable, at the wrong dose, at the wrong time of day, your blood can thicken, your pressure can swing, and a clot can form in the vessels that feed your brain. Silently, without pain, without warning. That is the conversation we are having today. Let's start with number 1, and I promise you, this one will surprise you. Spinach. If there is one vegetable that almost every patient over 60 believes is non-negotiable, it's spinach. Iron, folate, antioxidants. You've been told since childhood that this is one of the best things you can put in your body, and for most of your life, that was true. Here is what changes after 60. A significant number of older Australians are prescribed blood thinners, warfarin, Xarelto, Eliquis. Medications designed to keep your blood flowing freely to prevent exactly the kind of clot that causes stroke. Spinach is one of the richest sources of vitamin K on Earth, and vitamin K is the direct biochemical opponent of blood thinners. Here is the mechanism, simply. Warfarin works by blocking vitamin K's role in the clotting process. When you eat large amounts of spinach, a big salad, a green smoothie, sautéed spinach with dinner, you are flooding your system with the exact compound your medication is trying to suppress. Your medication loses ground. Your blood begins to thicken again. And in that thickened, slower-moving blood, small clots begin to form. You don't feel them. They are microscopic, but they are moving, and some of them move toward the brain. I treated a man named Graham, 72 years old, retired electrician from the Mornington Peninsula, sharp, disciplined, careful with his health. He took his warfarin every single evening without fail. He also started every morning with a green smoothie, spinach, kale, banana, almond milk, because he'd read it was good for his heart. For 4 months, he felt excellent. Then one Tuesday morning, his wife walked into the kitchen and found him standing at the bench, staring at the wall, not moving, not responding. His right hand was gripping the bench so tightly his knuckles were white, but he couldn't speak. The scan showed a clot lodged in his left middle cerebral artery. The blood work told the rest of the story. His INR, the measure of how thin or thick his blood is, had swung dangerously out of range. Not because he missed his medication, because the vitamin K in his daily smoothie had quietly neutralized it over weeks. The smoothie he made every morning to protect his heart was the thing that stole his speech. He recovered, partially. But the Graham who came home from rehabilitation was not the same Graham who walked into that kitchen on a Tuesday morning. This is not a reason to stop eating spinach. It is a reason to stop eating it inconsistently. The danger is not in the spinach itself. The danger is in the spike. Eating large amounts one day, nothing the next, then a smoothie the day after. That inconsistency is what throws your INR into chaos. Your medication calibration is built on a steady baseline. When you disrupt that baseline, your protection disappears. If you take any blood thinner, talk to your GP specifically about vitamin K consistency, not elimination. Consistency. Same amount, same days. Never a sudden surge, and never a large spinach smoothie on a whim, because the brain doesn't give you a second chance to learn that lesson. How many of you drink green smoothies regularly? Type the number of times per week in the comments right now. I want to see. Now, spinach affects your blood's clotting ability, but the next vegetable on this list does something different. Instead of thickening your blood, it can drop your blood pressure so low while you sleep that your brain simply cannot get enough oxygen. And that shortage, even brief, even minor, is enough to trigger a stroke. Beetroot. Australians love beetroot on a burger, in a salad, as a juice. And for good reason. The research on beetroot and cardiovascular health is genuinely impressive. It is rich in nitrates, which your body converts into nitric oxide, which relaxes blood vessel walls and lowers pressure. For a healthy 45-year-old, that is a straightforward benefit. For a 68-year-old on blood pressure medication, it can become a serious problem. Here is the mechanism. When you take your blood pressure medication and then consume beetroot juice or a large serving of roasted beets, the two work in the same direction. Both are lowering your pressure. Both are relaxing your vessel walls. Combined, they can push your pressure below the threshold your brain needs to maintain adequate blood flow. Your brain is the most metabolically demanding organ in your body. It consumes 20% of your total energy while representing only 2% of your body weight. It needs constant, stable, high-pressure delivery of oxygenated blood. When pressure drops too low, not dramatically, not so you collapse, just enough, just sustained enough, the blood moving through your brain's smallest vessels slows down. It pools. It thickens. And in that low-flow environment, a clot forms. This is called a hemodynamic stroke, and it is far more common in older adults than most people realise, because it doesn't look like a traditional stroke risk. It looks like someone who is managing their blood pressure responsibly. I had a patient named Margaret, 79 years old, former schoolteacher from Ballarat. She was meticulous about her health, medication every morning at 7, a glass of beetroot juice every evening. She'd read it was natural, heart-healthy, lower blood pressure without side effects. Her GP was pleased with her numbers. Her pressure was beautifully controlled. One morning, her daughter phoned her at 9 and there was no answer. She drove over, found her mother sitting in her armchair by the window, conscious but confused, words coming out in the wrong order, her left hand not responding to instructions. At the hospital, her blood pressure was 78/50. The scan showed a small ischemic stroke in her cerebellum, the part of the brain that controls balance, coordination, and spatial awareness. The clot had formed overnight, during the hours when blood pressure naturally drops during sleep, compounded by her evening medication and her evening beetroot juice working together. Her walking has never fully recovered. If you love beetroot, and there is every reason to, eat it earlier in the day, never in the evening, never combined with your medication window, and never as a concentrated juice, which delivers nitrates in a far more intense dose than food. Whole beetroot with lunch, small portion, that is the safe version. And if you are on any antihypertensive medication, tell your GP you are eating beetroot regularly. They need to know. Because food and medicine are not separate conversations. They are the same conversation. Now, beetroot lowers your pressure. What comes next does something more subtle, but in some ways more dangerous. It quietly dehydrates you. And in an older body, dehydration does not feel like thirst. It feels like tiredness, like brain fog, like a slightly off morning. And while you are putting it down to age, your blood is getting thicker by the hour. Most people think of dehydration as something that happens on a hot day, after exercise, when you've been sweating. That is not the dehydration I'm talking about. After 60, your brain's thirst signal weakens. This is documented, consistent, and almost universally underestimated. Younger people feel thirst long before dehydration becomes dangerous. Older adults frequently reach clinical dehydration without feeling notably thirsty at all, so your body is losing fluid, and it is not telling you. Now add celery. Celery is a natural diuretic. It stimulates your kidneys to release fluid and sodium. In a young, well-hydrated person, useful. In an older adult who is already mildly dehydrated and doesn't know it, dangerous. And if that older adult is also taking a prescribed diuretic for blood pressure or fluid retention, the combination compounds. Two systems pulling fluid from the body simultaneously, with no adequate signal to drink more water. As fluid leaves your bloodstream, your blood volume drops. Your blood becomes more concentrated, more viscous. It moves more slowly through smaller vessels. And the smallest vessels in your body, the ones most easily blocked, are the ones inside your brain. This is not a dramatic process. It is a quiet, cumulative one. Day after day, mild dehydration. Night after night, circulation just slightly compromised. Until a vessel that has been narrowing for months finally closes. I want to tell you about a patient named Robert, 81 years old, retired carpenter, active, independent, proud of it. He had a routine. Every afternoon, he ate celery sticks with peanut butter, his healthy snack. He also took a mild diuretic prescribed for ankle swelling. He drank tea, rarely water, assumed the tea was enough. One morning, his neighbour noticed his front door was still shut at 10. Knocked, got no answer. Called the ambulance. Robert had slipped from his chair sometime in the early hours. His left arm would not respond to commands. His speech was slow and slurred. At hospital, severe dehydration, sodium imbalance, blood viscosity elevated, a small ischemic stroke in the right parietal lobe. The clot had been building for weeks. The celery didn't cause it alone, but it was the daily nudge that kept the conditions exactly wrong. If you eat celery regularly and you take any diuretic medication, tell your GP, reduce your celery portions, and most importantly, drink water deliberately. Not when you feel thirsty, on a schedule. A glass at 9, a glass at noon, a glass at 3, because your brain's thirst signal can no longer be trusted to protect you. Hydration at this age is not instinctive, it is intentional. Are you drinking enough water every day? Type yes or no in the comments right now. Honestly. Now, celery dehydrates. The next vegetable does something that most GPs would never connect to stroke risk. Because its effect is hormonal, it quietly suppresses your thyroid. And when your thyroid slows, even slightly, your metabolism drops, your cholesterol rises, your blood thickens, and the chain reaction toward vascular damage begins. This is the one. Number 5, the one I mentioned at the beginning. In my clinic, when I review the dietary history of patients who have had a stroke with no obvious cause, no severe hypertension, no atrial fibrillation, no dramatic risk factor, kale appears with a frequency that I cannot ignore. Not as a definitive cause, medicine is rarely that simple, but as part of a pattern, consistently, repeatedly, raw kale in large quantities, consumed daily, over months. Here is the mechanism. Kale belongs to the cruciferous family. Like broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, it contains natural compounds called goitrogens. Goitrogens interfere with your thyroid's ability to absorb iodine, the essential mineral your thyroid needs to produce its hormones. In moderate amounts, cooked, occasionally, not a problem. Your thyroid compensates easily, but raw kale, in large quantities, consumed daily, particularly as smoothies, where the volume of kale consumed far exceeds what anyone would eat in a salad, can genuinely suppress thyroid function over time. And here is why that matters for your brain. When your thyroid slows, your metabolism slows with it. LDL cholesterol rises. Your red blood cells become less flexible, less able to squeeze through narrow capillaries. Your circulation loses efficiency. Your blood moves sluggishly through vessels that were already being asked to work harder with age. Sluggish blood clots more easily. And your thyroid can suppress gradually enough that you don't feel the classic symptoms. Not dramatically cold, not dramatically fatigued, just slightly slower, slightly foggier, which most people over 60 attribute to age. Meanwhile, the vascular damage accumulates. I had a patient named Patricia, 76, former nurse, which made this particularly painful for both of us. She knew more about health than most of my patients. She started every morning with a raw kale, spinach, and almond milk smoothie. She was precise about it. Same recipe, every day, for over a year. She came to me not because of stroke symptoms, but because of brain fog and unexplained fatigue. Her GP had put it down to age. Her thyroid levels told a different story, significantly suppressed. Her cholesterol was elevated in a way that didn't match her diet. Her blood markers showed elevated viscosity. We changed her diet. Cooked cruciferous vegetables instead of raw. Consistent iodine from seafood. 3 months later, her thyroid markers had improved substantially. She never had a stroke, because we caught the pattern. But I have sat across from other patients who came to me after, not before, where the timeline told a story that was harder to hear. The fix is simple. Cook your kale. Steaming or sautéing reduces the goitrogenic effect significantly. Limit raw kale smoothies to no more than 2 or 3 times per week, not daily. And if you are over 60, ask your GP to include a thyroid panel in your next blood test. It is a simple test. It is frequently omitted from routine checks. And it can reveal a slow deterioration that is entirely reversible, if you catch it before it cascades. Now, if kale's danger is hormonal and gradual, the next one is immediate. It's in a can. It's sitting in your pantry right now. And every time you open it, you are flooding your aging arteries with a compound that stiffens vessel walls, thickens blood, and raises stroke risk with every single serving. I want you to picture your pantry. Canned tomatoes, canned corn, canned green beans, canned soup with vegetables, canned chickpeas, possibly canned beetroot. These feel responsible, convenient, healthy enough. They are vegetables after all. Now I want you to look at the sodium content on one of those cans, any of them. A standard can of green beans, 400 milligrams of sodium. Canned corn, 350 milligrams. Canned tomatoes, up to 500 milligrams per serve. Canned soup, frequently 800 to 1,000 milligrams in a single bowl. The recommended daily sodium limit for adults over 60 is 1,600 milligrams. A tin of soup and a side of canned vegetables at dinner, and you are at your daily limit in one meal. Here is what excess sodium does inside an aging body. Sodium pulls water into the bloodstream. This increases blood volume, which increases pressure. In a young body with flexible arteries, the vessels simply expand. In an older body with stiffened arterial walls, that expansion cannot happen. The pressure has nowhere to go. It pushes against vessel walls that are already compromised. Over time, microscopic damage accumulates along the inner lining of those vessels. The body rushes to repair each tiny injury, sending platelets, sending fibrin, and in the process creates exactly the kind of rough, uneven surface where clots begin to form and stick. You do not feel this happening. There is no pain in a stiffening artery. There is no sensation when a platelet adheres to a damaged vessel wall. You feel fine. And that is the most dangerous part of all. I saw this pattern most clearly in a patient named Brian, 80 years old, widower. After his wife passed, he began relying entirely on canned and packaged food. Not because he was careless, because he was grieving and cooking for one felt impossible. Canned soup, canned vegetables, crackers. His blood pressure climbed over 18 months, from 140 to 160 to 178. His GP adjusted his medication twice. It helped, but not enough, because the medication was fighting a dietary input that Brian didn't recognise as a problem. One afternoon, his son arrived for a visit and found Brian in the hallway, one hand on the wall, unable to form a sentence. Moderate ischemic stroke, left hemisphere. The recovery was long and incomplete. The fix requires almost no effort. Drain and rinse canned vegetables before eating. This alone reduces sodium content by up to 40%. Choose low sodium or no added salt versions. They are on the same shelf, they cost the same, and they taste nearly identical once heated with your own seasoning. Better still, frozen vegetables. Unsalted, frozen at peak nutrition, no preservatives, same convenience. The bag of frozen peas in your freezer is a better choice than the can of peas in your pantry. Every time. If you have high blood pressure, this single change, this week, will do more than most supplements promise to do. If you eat canned vegetables regularly, type "kind" in the comments. No judgment. I want to know how many of you this applies to. We have 2 left. And the last one, the one we finish with, is one that surprises people every single time. Because it doesn't look dangerous. It looks like comfort. It looks like tradition. But first, number 6. The vegetable that is not really a vegetable to your body at all. It is sugar. Pure, concentrated sugar that your aging pancreas can no longer process safely. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you consider potatoes a vegetable? Most people do. And technically, yes. But what matters is not the botanical classification. What matters is what happens inside your body 30 minutes after you eat one. A medium baked potato has a glycemic index of around 85. White bread is 73. A can of soft drink is approximately 63. Your baked potato raises your blood sugar faster than soft drink. That is not a metaphor, that is physiology. When you eat a potato, mashed, baked, boiled, the starch converts to glucose almost immediately. In a younger body, insulin surges within minutes, captures that glucose, and the blood sugar spike is short and managed. After 60, insulin sensitivity declines. Your pancreas responds, but more slowly. The glucose stays in your bloodstream longer. And during that window, that extended period of elevated blood sugar, a process called glycation begins. Glycation is what happens when excess sugar attaches to proteins in your blood and your vessel walls. It stiffens them. It inflames them. It makes the inner lining of your arteries rough and irritated, which, as you now understand, is exactly the surface where clots form. Every large serve of potato is not just a blood sugar spike. It is a direct inflammatory event in your arteries. I need to be specific about what I mean by large. A small potato paired with protein and fat and fibre. The spike is moderated. The glycemic impact is blunted. That is a manageable meal. The problem is how most Australians eat potatoes. A large portion of mashed potato alone. A baked potato for dinner with no protein. Or, and this is the most dangerous, instant mashed potato, which has a glycemic index approaching 100. Essentially, pure glucose in a bowl. I had a patient named Linda, 70 years old, no history of diabetes, not overweight. She exercised. She never drank alcohol. She ate what she considered a responsible, traditional Australian diet. Every evening, a baked potato with her main meal, plain, no butter. She thought she was being virtuous. Her fasting blood glucose was normal. But her post-meal spikes, which are rarely tested in standard checkups, were significantly elevated. Her inflammatory markers were rising. Her blood viscosity was increasing. One afternoon, reading to her granddaughter, she dropped her book. Her right side didn't respond. A CT scan confirmed an ischemic stroke in her left hemisphere. In her medical history, no obvious risk factors, except the daily blood sugar surges that nobody had flagged because nobody had looked. The fix is not elimination. It is pairing and portioning. Never eat potatoes alone. Always pair with protein, chicken, fish, eggs, legumes. Always include a source of fat, olive oil, avocado, to slow absorption. Reduce portion size, and if you eat potatoes frequently, ask your GP to check your 2-hour post-meal blood glucose, not just fasting. The spike is where the damage happens, and swap occasionally to sweet potato. The glycemic index is significantly lower. The nutritional profile is richer. Your arteries will notice the difference. One more, and this one I want you to listen carefully to, because it involves a habit that feels harmless, even ritualistic. Something you may do every evening without a second thought. A few pickles before bed. A small dish of sauerkraut with dinner. A spoonful of kimchi, because you read about gut health. These feel virtuous. The research on fermented foods and the microbiome is real and growing. Probiotics matter. Gut health matters. But for older adults, particularly those managing blood pressure, fermented vegetables carry a risk that the gut health conversation almost never mentions. Sodium and acid. A single serving of commercial pickles can contain 800 milligrams of sodium, more than half a day's recommended limit for someone over 60. In one small side dish. You already know what excess sodium does to aging arteries. We covered that with canned vegetables. But pickles add an additional layer that canned vegetables don't. Acid. The acidity in pickles, from vinegar or lactic acid fermentation, can trigger what is called silent reflux in older adults. Unlike classic reflux, which burns, silent reflux frequently produces no sensation, particularly in older patients whose pain sensitivity in the esophagus diminishes with age. But silent reflux still irritates. And the vagus nerve, a major nerve that runs from your brainstem through your chest and abdomen, is sensitive to that irritation. The vagus nerve plays a direct role in regulating heart rate and blood pressure. When the vagus nerve is chronically irritated, particularly during the night when you are lying flat and acid can travel further, it can cause subtle, unpredictable fluctuations in blood pressure and heart rhythm. Dips, spikes, moments of hemodynamic instability during the hours when your circulation is already at its slowest. Those are the hours when clots form most easily. I am not telling you to eliminate fermented foods. The probiotic benefit is real, but the timing and the source matter enormously. Eat fermented vegetables at lunch, not dinner. Choose low-sodium versions. Limit portions to a small accompaniment, not a main feature. Drink water alongside. And if you take any blood pressure medication, tell your GP you eat fermented foods regularly, because the combined effect of sodium, acid, and antihypertensive medication in an older body is not always predictable. One more thing. If you wake regularly in the night, not to use the bathroom, but just restless, heart slightly racing, a sense of unease, consider whether your evening meal is contributing. Silent reflux and its vagal effects are frequently mistaken for anxiety, light sleep, or simply aging. They are not always any of those things. 7 vegetables, all of them appearing on health guides, all of them genuinely beneficial, in the right context, at the right dose, at the right time. That is the conversation I wish happened more often between doctors and patients over 60. Not, eat your vegetables. But here is how your body has changed, and here is what that means for the food on your plate. Let me give you the practical summary. Keep this. Spinach and leafy greens. Keep them, but keep them consistent. Same amount, same days. No sudden surges. And if you take a blood thinner, your INR is only reliable if your vitamin K intake is predictable. Beetroot, genuinely heart healthy. But eat it at lunch, not dinner. Never as an evening juice. And never on the same day you take blood pressure medication without spacing the timing deliberately. Celery, a useful food, not a dangerous one. But pair it with water, always. And if you take a diuretic, reduce your celery portions and discuss it with your GP. Kale, cook it, steam it, saute it, roast it. Limit raw kale smoothies. Get a thyroid panel at your next blood test. It is a simple request, and it may tell you something important. Canned vegetables, rinse them. Choose low sodium. Keep frozen vegetables in your freezer as a default. The change is minor. The benefit is significant. Potatoes, pair them, always. Protein and fat alongside every serving. Reduce portion size. Ask about post-meal glucose testing. Consider sweet potato as a frequent alternative. Fermented vegetables. Eat them at lunch. Choose low sodium options. Drink water with every serving. None of this requires giving up food you love. All of it requires knowing your body as it is now, not as it was 20 years ago. Because the most important shift that happens after 60 is not physical. It is this. The margin for error narrows. The body that once absorbed the occasional dietary mistake and recovered quietly no longer does that as reliably. What passed through becomes what accumulates. What was harmless becomes what lingers. That is not a reason for fear. It is a reason for precision. You have lived long enough to know the difference between the two. Now I want to know, which of these 7 surprised you most? Type the number in the comments below, 1 through 7. I read every single one. If this gave you something valuable today, share it with someone you care about. Not because I'm asking for a view, because the person who needs this information most is probably not looking for it. They're eating spinach smoothies for breakfast and thinking they're doing everything right, just like my patients did. Take care of your brain. It is the only one you have, and it is worth the conversation.